All right. Well, it is the Lord's Day. And on the Lord's Day, we set it aside for the specific purpose of gathering together to worship God together, to be strengthened by one another, to be strengthened by and through the fact of worshiping in and of itself. Once I put on Christ in the waters of baptism, I did not return back into the world. And I don't say this in a vainglorious way. So I really don't know what it's like to fall away and then to come back. I don't know that. I don't want to experience it. But I do know that there have been a lot of people that have done that. And we've been looking at David and his life and things of that nature. And David is one who went through that. And he had a mighty, mighty fall. But one of the things I appreciate about David, and there's a lot, but I appreciate when he writes the Psalms of Ascent. Now, you need to understand what the Psalms of Ascent are. When the Sabbath came around and the people were going to the temple, going to what was their place of worship, the temple hadn't been built yet. But they were going, and they were going on top of the mountain there in Jerusalem. And as they would go, they would sing songs of ascent. And when you look at these short psalms, they're beautiful. And they're powerful in their own way. Because the psalmist, most cases David, sometimes Solomon, or others, would really put a sentiment out that should be one that we have on the first day of the week. We talk about not forsaking our own assembly together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. The Psalms of Ascent are that. The idea of encouraging one another. Could you imagine if, before we entered into the building, if we gathered together and we sang psalms as we made the procession into the church building? That'd be great. I'm not recommending that we take that on, but that would be great. If it happened in an organic fashion, that would be wonderful. Here we are, we're out in the parking lot. Come, let us all unite to sing, and in we come. If it was organic like that. We mentioned, Austin mentioned, I mentioned it, about the last time we got together as the men's group. As everything was closing down, we were cleaning up the dishes from the repast that Linda had made for us. And somebody had made a statement, I think it was Phil, about something. And then we broke out into song. And we were able to go through the first verse and the chorus. No songbook, nothing. And most people know the first verse of every song we sing. We've sung it enough. So we know that first verse. And it still resonates with me. But that's what these songs of ascent are. The writers write them. The people know them. And in an organic fashion, they sing these songs as they're going to the service, as they're going to worship God. This is really a special day. We were talking earlier about what August 1st is. And I told Janice and others that, well, you know what happened 50 years ago today. And others said, well, this is what happened 50 years ago. And all the various and sundry things that happened. But more importantly, this is unique because it is the first day of the week. And it continues that chain that has been in effect for millennia plus. 2 millennia, getting close to. The first day of the week being the day of the Lord's Day. John in the book of Revelation talks about how he was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day, first day of the week. Now, a lot of people say, well, what does he mean by that? Does he mean that he was in a trance-like state? We'll know that he's going to go into something like that later on. But I think what he's talking about, since he mentions it was the Lord's Day, that he was worshiping God with an attitude of spirit and truth. And he was looking forward to that time. So let's look at a couple of the Psalms of Ascent and see if we can have some takeaways from it. The Psalms of Ascent are back in the latter part of the book of Psalms. I forget which psalm actually starts the Psalm of Ascent. Which one? I know they go through like 130 something, but if memory serves me, I think it's 120. But let's look at the 122nd Psalm. And it is a psalm of ascent, a song that would have been sung or chanted as they're going to worship God. And I love how it starts out. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. We know ultimately what happens to David. We know that he gets involved in dalliance with Bathsheba. We know that he impregnates her. We know that he has her husband, Uriah the Hittite, killed. We know that, all to cover up his sin. We know that ultimately the child dies. We know that Nathan confronts him and accuses him of being that very man. Because what Nathan does when he confronts him is he lays out this scenario. And it's horrendous. And David goes, well, here's what I would do to the guy. And then Nathan turns to him and says, you are that man. You, sir, are that man. And David is remorseful. From that point on, David's life changes. And so now, as David's life changes, he writes this song. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. This psalm is celebration. This is what the people are singing as they go to worship God on the Lord's Day that was set by God back then, on the Sabbath. How many times do we hear people say this today? I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. I don't know. I kind of look forward to coming down here. Not just because it's what I do. Yeah, it is because of what I do. Not because of my vocation, but because of my advocation as a Christian. In spite of yourselves, I like seeing you people. I don't know why, but I kind of like you. Darcy Welch, and I know I've said this before, she was at our house one time. We were having some kind of get together, and she was sitting there, and out of the clear blue, she simply says, I kind of like it here. I like you people. And I know Al and Janice were there, and Kurt and Ingrid were there. Christina was there. Darcy was there. Linda and I were there. I think there was 2 other people, another couple. and we were enjoying one another's company. I like you people. I like you. Do we really like one another? I mean, it's one thing to love somebody. I mean, yes, I have a love for Austin. I have a love for Haley and Margaret and so on. We love Austin and Haley. We like Haley. Do we like Austin? Or do we tolerate Austin? I know people say they have a love for me, but I challenge you, do you like me? And probably, maybe not so much, because like is different than love. I kind of think like is love really on steroids. It's a great scene in a movie called Shenandoah. Jimmy Stewart plays the father. Takes place in the South during the Civil War. And one of the other characters wants to marry his daughter. And he says, okay, do you love my daughter? Oh, yes, I love your daughter, I do. And he goes, wait a minute. I know you love her. What's not to love? She's my daughter. And I'm using hyperbole here, but you'll get the point in a second. And Jimmy Stewart stops him and says, all right, wait a minute. I know you love her. You like her. And that took the young man by, gave him a sense to pause. I know you would say you love her. You like her? Jason loves Brittany. Does Jason like Brittany? I would like to think he does. I love Linda. I like her as much as I love her, if not more. And it's been over 50 years. And I know neither one of us look old enough. But trust me, it's been that long. We met and married shortly out of kindergarten. Bolt of lightning goes through. But here's what's going on here. I was glad when they said to me, do we want to come here? Because quite honestly, if we really wanted to be here, nothing would stop us. Nothing. I want to be with those people. I want to gather with them because I like them. And yes, we like Austin. We truly do. Janice, man. But if we tease, and in all honesty, when I tease or make a name about you, I really like you. And if I don't, it's because I respect you. It means I like you. So just go with the assumption that I like everybody because I'm so likable. Boy is giving me looks that if I were of a sensitive nature, I would be crawling on the floor. All right, but that's what he's talking about. I was glad. First day of the week, we've got to be glad to come down here. It is a great day that we can gather together with those who like precious faith and sing songs of praise and assemble and visit and know and share and gain strength from strength. But watch what he goes on to say. Our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem that is built as a city that is compact together. I like that. We know over in the book of Hebrews. If you want, you can flip over to the 12th chapter. Hold your finger back here in Psalms. But in Hebrews, the 12th chapter, if you go into verse 18, for you have not come to a blazing mountain, Hebrews 12:18, that may be touched into a blazing fire, into darkness and gloom and a whirlwind, to the blast of a trumpet with the sounds of words, which sound was such that Those who heard begged that no further word should be spoken to them, for they could not bear the command. Even if a beast touches the mountain, it will be stoned. And so terrible was the sight that Moses said, "I'm fear of trembling. You have come to Mount Zion." Now he's talking about the spiritual Jerusalem, the church, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to the myriads of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of righteous men made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, to the sprinkled blood which speaks better than the blood of Abel. We have been joined together, compacted together in this one body, this one entity, close proximity, not at arm's length distance, but close, intimate, sharing. 2 Sundays ago, many of you met a young woman that came here. Her name was Eve, and she came with her husband and their small child. It had been 30 years since I had last seen Eve. And she walked in. I would not have recognized her. She immediately saw me, came over and hugged me. It was a great feeling. And she did the same with Linda. And to realize where she had been and where she is now. She had fallen away from the church. Big time. But now she was back. And she was talking about how great it is to be back with saints. We were brought together the way God would design it to be. And I'm so glad that many of you went up to meet her, because now it means that body gets another one in and in and in. And we have a closer net relationship of all the various ones. That's what he's talking about here. So I was glad because we're together. We have something that the rest of the world does not understand. And that's what David is alluding to here. And that's what Hebrews 12 is talking about. Now, in the 10th chapter and verse 24, passage we've heard and heard and heard, not forsaking our own assembly together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. We don't want to be in the habit of not congregating. If you constantly are invited to somebody's house, let's go do X, Y, and Z. And you go, no. And I'm guilty of this sometimes. No. Eventually, they're not going to ask you anymore. If anybody invites me to do anything, I try to always say yes, because I don't want to be left out. And we ask a lot of people over at our house. And that always wasn't the habit with me. It took some prodding and getting used to it. But I'm glad to have people in the house. I want the relationship to get closer and tighter. I want to be forced to come out of my comfort zone. I want to be seen as gregarious. And in order to be seen that way, I have to interact with people. And that's part of what happens on the first day of the week. So when David talks about this, he's saying, I'm coming from a standpoint, I was far away from the truth. I was not worshiping God. Now I am. I was glad when this day came and all that it entails. So yeah, when Eve walked in that door, she had called me a day before. I was glad to hear from her. Tremendously glad to hear from her. And then to see her in person and to see the way that you were warm to her and welcoming. That says a lot. Well, that's what we have the opportunity to do on the first day of the week. When people come in that door, It would be great if they saw the members here and felt the warmth and the radiation that comes from us. Not, we were talking about at lunch about the creation of the humanoids or whatever was on Svengoolie last night. And I'm so proud of Margaret and Janice. They watched it both and left out their little friend Joy out of the fun equation. But we're not talking about that automatron approach about radiation, but a radiation of the love and the likeness that we want for everyone. We have something special going on here. And we need to celebrate it. And we need to be able to bring others into contact with it. So let's go back into Psalms 122. He then goes on to say in verse 4, to which the tribes go up, even the tribes of the Lord, an ordinance for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. We are spiritual Jerusalem. We saw that in Hebrews 12. And we're going up to give up praise and honor to God. Verse 5, for their thrones were set up for judgment, the thrones for the house of David. 6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. May peace be within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brothers and my friends, I will now say, may peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord and our God, I will seek your good. That's a beautiful little psalm. Psalm of Ascent. Organically, people have this. They're going up to worship God. They're uttering these words. And the sentimentality that David has for it. Go over a few more Psalms. And into the 131st Psalm. Again, this is a Psalm of Ascent. Simple, short. Doesn't have to be long. I mean, not all Psalms have to be the 119th Psalm. Expansive, diagrammed out in such a way that you have a quasi-acrostic going on. Sometimes the shorter, the better. Do you know, and I heard it somewhere, I'll just say I heard it somewhere. And I'm trying to remember where I heard it from. But the man who wrote the jingle for In-N-Out Burger, you know the song, In and out, that's what a hamburger's all about. Austin and Haley go, what? It's a hamburger place. But anyways, he made millions of dollars with that. The way he structured it was that he would get royalty and his family would get royalty every time it was played. It's a short little jingle, but it's etched into our collective psyches. If I mention it, Joy, you hear the melody go in your head, don't you? Oh, you. Janice, yeah. Thank you. And even probably Brittany. Brittany's clueless. All right, bad illustration. What about O'Reilly's theme song? There you go. How big of a song is that? But whoever made that jingle, making tons of money. David's communication of what he wants to get across is not always expansive. Short, precise, direct, jingleistic. I know that's not a word, but it's short and it gets into your mind. These Psalm of Ascents are for that purpose. So look at this one, the 131st. 3 verses long. 3. O Lord, my heart is not proud, or my eyes haughty, nor do I involve myself in great matters. As I look at this, To me, it is childlike, which is fine. I think one of the greatest compliments I ever heard a preacher give to an elder was by D. Bowman. D was holding a meeting for us. It seemed like everywhere I went for several years, D was holding a meeting for us. At Lassen Street, D held like 3 meetings when I was there. But D was preaching on prayer. And he said, I heard the greatest prayer last night. He said it was by Brother Hunter, by Walt Hunter. And he said it was so childlike. It was so beautiful. Now, I myself might have taken umbrage had that been said of me. What's he saying? I'm a child? It's not what he was saying at all. But he was talking about the innocence and the approach of a child to a father. And that's what David does here. He's not trying to impress anyone. He's very childlike as he goes to God the Father in, again, this psalm of ascent. I'm not proud. My eyes haughty, nor do I involve myself in great matters. He's the king. But what I take out of that is he's saying, I do what I can do. I realize my limitations. And I respect those limitations. But I'm going to do what I can do. And again, remember, these are psalms that as they ascend to the hill to worship, they're involved in singing. And they're doing it as a collective. And how beautiful all of this must be. Then he goes on to say in that latter part of verse 1, or in things too difficult for me. I realize when I'm in over my head. I realize that. There are different things that I'm in over my head on. A lot of things. And I won't go down that road. I do not understand actuarial tables and charts. I'm never going to do what David Odorizzi does. Never. Not going to be an actuarial. I'm not going to do what Haley does. I'm not going to be involved in economics. They are above my pay grade. But give me something simple, something rudimentary, and okay, I can deal with it. Give me something that I can be somewhat ambiguous with an answer that's more open to choice, fine. But mathematics, no. Now, that's not what he's talking about here, but what he is talking about. David is saying, I know my limitations. And he's talking about his limitations as he comes before God. And what he's saying is, I know my place. As I come before God, I know my place. Humble, lowly, I know my place. Do we know our place as we're coming before God? Are we there in that mindset of humility? In the recognition that God is the creator of all things? That's what we're doing when we're here. When we're singing songs of praise. Well, it's nice to hit the right note. It's not the end all and be all of everything. But what is our attitude and the words that we're communicating to Him. That's what's important. I'm never, ever going to wow people with my singing voice. Never happen. I don't even try. I mean, I do try to do my best. But I know I've got limitations there. And my limitations are my voice. I know that. So I do the best I can, and God will accept what I can do. But what he's saying here, and I realize we can all improve. Look at what he goes on to say. Verse 2, surely I have composed and quieted my soul. I've gotten it together. I now begin to approach him. I am prepared to go and worship the God of heaven. I think the other thing that's communicated there when he talks about the humility and recognition of who God is and coming to God childlike is the idea of trust and confidence. I truly trust God. I have absolute confidence in him. And I liken it to a kid who is learning how to swim. And they've got their floaties on their arms, and they're standing at the side of the pool. And the parent is in the water. And the parent's saying, jump in, I'll make sure everything's fine. Jump in, it's going to be okay. And with much hesitation, the child has a few starts and stops and starts and stops, and then jumps in. And the arms and the feet are just thrashing and flashing. But the parent reaches out and brings them to him. The next time it's easier and easier and easier. What he's saying here is, I've really come to trust God. And I have quieted my soul. I don't have that apprehension any longer. And this is explained even more in the latter part of that verse. Like a weaned child rests against his mother, my soul is like a weaned child within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forever. So in this little ascension psalm, you have childlike innocence. You have childlike trust. You have an individual who says, I'm ready to worship. And when I come to worship God, I'm glad. I'm glad to be there with others. And I am at peace and tranquility of a spiritual nature rests within me. That's the beautiful part about it. And that's what we want to be able to communicate within ourselves each and every first day of the week. And we should long for, desire. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the household of the Lord. It's time. It's time. Earlier on this year, I wrote a little article, and it was based on something Al brought out. And what Al brought out was how on Saturday, as he was growing up, his father made the boys and the kids in the family shine their shoes, get everything ready, because the following morning they were going to go somewhere special. And I remember Al saying that. And Sunday morning came along, and they were prepared. They weren't out allowed, I guess, when they were younger, to stay out real late on Saturday night because Sunday was coming along. Under the Old Testament, the Jews had the day of preparation. They got everything ready the day before. But it is indicative of a mindset of being willing and looking forward to go and assemble on the day appointed by God. And that's why these two Psalms of Ascent, to me, just really resonate and are just uplifting. And they come back and address me on a personal basis. I don't know about you. It's not up for me to decide what you think or act or react. But each one of us has to look deep inside themselves and ask the question, are we really glad that we can come together on the first day of the week? That we can be part of something larger than us? And then we have the opportunity to grow with one another and to assemble with one another and worship with one another and to be the best possible person we can be. Well, the lesson is yours this afternoon. 2 short songs. But hopefully it has helped us to appreciate all the more what it is God would have us and want us to do. Everyone that's here this afternoon is a member of the body of Christ. Are there any here that need to partake of the Lord's Supper? I don't think so. But everyone here this afternoon is a member of the body of Christ. But if there are those that are joining us either on the conference call or through YouTube, if you would like to study more about what it takes to become a Christian, we'll be more than happy to arrange a study time. And I'm not adverse to going into your home. If you're willing to have somebody come into your home, I'll be glad to do it. If you want me to mask up, I'll be glad to do it. I look forward to the opportunity to teach and show you what the scriptures have to say, nothing more and nothing less. And I know there are a couple of you that we've been talking to in the past few months that you've indicated you're ready to obey the gospel. I just wonder what's holding you back. What's holding you? What's keeping you from obeying? Maybe I can answer that question. Maybe I can help you to make that decision and help you get over that hesitancy. Whatever I can do to help, please give me a call. Send me an email. Write me a snail mail. There's nothing more valuable than your soul's salvation.